Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
I got to say that I'm waiting for the panel discussion because I really want to know, now that you've told us how to communicate to other people, it also seems to me that you've given us an idea on how we get communicated to very easily and maybe show us our weak points. So let's talk about that a little later. In the meantime, let's move on. And I'd like to introduce Gatik Chaujer. Gatik is an authentic storytelling coach and a transformational leadership coach. He's a passionate facilitator, coach, and keynote speaker. His own journey is a story worth listening to. Driven by his mission to transform 1 million lives, Gatik's uniqueness lies in his innate ability to connect, spontaneously share, be mindfully present, and bring humor to learning. So, a believer that we're all born storytellers. He says he got into storytelling coaching in 2012, and it led him to uncover his own natural passion. So, Gatik, the art of storytelling is your topic, and I'm excited. It's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. Just checking in if you can hear me loud and clear.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining in, wherever you're watching this from. It's about 10 a.m. in the morning for me. Really excited to be here and honored to have this opportunity to share with all of you something that I am deeply, deeply passionate about. And we'll talk about that in a bit. I thought I'll start off by sharing with you a little bit about myself that could help you relate with who I am, and more than that, really, why I do what I do. And I'd like to share with you 2 specific incidents from my life that have been instrumental in shaping who I am and why I do what I do. And both these incidents that I'm going to be sharing have to do with the one person I've looked up to, the one person I've admired the most in my life, my father, who I unfortunately lost about 10 years back. So my dad was a senior officer with the Indian Air Force, and a typical image of an Air Force pilot that you can conjure up, 6 feet, 2 inches tall, broad shoulders, extremely handsome looking man. That was my father. Obviously, the genes went elsewhere, I reckon. But my dad was one of the most social, one of the most jovial, one of the most helpful people I've really ever known. And one of the qualities of his that I really admired was his intent to help and his intent to serve others each and every time. And I want to share with you 2 specific incidents from there, which have really become cemented in my mind and have formed my own belief system around how I want to operate. So I still remember one evening, I was about 15 years old, and I overheard a conversation between my parents, and it was a bit of an argument. And I did what teenagers do. I eavesdropped into their conversation. I soon realized that my mother was quite upset with my father. And mom was talking to him about a new business partner of his. So my dad was retiring from the Air Force and starting a business. And there was this business partner he had, Mr. Call. And the context was that there was some issues with Mr. Call not pulling his weight in the business, his intent not being too clear, him doing some things that were not very right. And in the midst of all of this, Mr. Call was traveling to our city, and he needed a place to stay. And he asked my father, and my father told him that he could stay with us for a week. So naturally, my mother was upset, and she was talking to my father, and she said, with all of this happening, with his intent being suspect, with him not pulling weight and all of this happening, how could you offer him staying at our house for a week? That's not right. Why should we help him? And I still remember my father sitting comfortably on that chair, just looked at mom with that signature calm smile of his and said these words. He said, if I have the ability to help somebody, I will. And as a 15-year-old, I registered it, but I didn't realize till much later how much of an impact this statement had had on my very being. If I have the ability to help somebody, I will. And there are numerous such instances where Dad displayed this beauty of his intent to help, his intent to serve. Uh, in fact, the second incident I want to share with you is whenever Dad would step out of home for grocery shopping, he would always carry this green grocery bag with him, right? And the moment he would step outside the house with this green bag in his hand, we had this really funny neighbor, this lady who would peep out of a window. And whenever she'd see Dad with that green bag, she'd call out to him and say, "Hey, Mr. Chaujer, are you going grocery shopping?" And he'd say, "Yes, I am." And she'd take out some money and tell him, "If you don't mind, can you get some bread and eggs and some milk for my house as well?" And Dad would always oblige. He'd say, "Sure, of course." And he'd take the money, get her stuff, and do that. And then another day, I heard Mom and Dad having this conversation, right, at the dining table. And Mom was not, too happy about Dad helping out this lady every time. And she said, why do you do that? Because, it's fine to help her, but she never reciprocates. I mean, she's never asked us if she could do anything for us. So it doesn't seem fair that you go out of your way and you do this for her because she's never reciprocated. And again, Dad, in his signature calm look with that smile, just looked at Mom and said, said quite lovingly to her, because she also knew this part about him. And he looked at her and he said, "Because of who she is, I can't stop being who I am." And somewhere I think these learnings, these deeper messages of being, of if I have the ability to help somebody, I will. And just because of who she is, I can't stop being who I am. Somewhere as a young adult, as a teenager, and then becoming a young adult, I believe they had a great impact on me, which I only realized much later. But this intent to help and serve rubbed off on me and has morphed into my purpose over the last 20 odd years. So that's really who I am. Someone who's driven by this deep desire to, and this deep purpose to enable and help others. And that's the mission that I've been on for the last 20 years, to enable transformation in others. And I do that. My vehicle to do that is by being a leadership facilitator, a team coach, and a storytelling coach. When I work with, whether it's organizations like Google, Accenture, or McKinsey, more forward-looking, or even organizations and institutions like the United Nations, where we do this deep transformational work. So I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to try and be able to enable and serve this community and the purpose that you're driving, which resonates very deeply with me, the Global Transformation Summit. So really excited to be here. And what I'd perhaps ask you to reflect on um, as you think about the last 3 or 4 minutes that you heard me share my narrative is really, how did you feel listening to my story? What happened to you when you were listening to parts of my story? And when I ask this question in a workshop format where I have people in front of me, some of the responses that I often get are right here on the screen for you. People often say that they felt engaged, or they felt connected, or they could relate to what I was saying, or to me. People say they could empathize, or they were able to visualize, right? And that really is the power of storytelling. And this I ask for those of you who felt related or connected. Just imagine being able to do that with a complete stranger, because none of you know me. I don't know any one of you. And if any one of you feeling some level of connectedness or relatedness, the question to ask is that, how amazing is this for this to happen in just 3 or 4 minutes of a conversation? And it goes back to what Dom said earlier in the first talk, where he spoke about the future of leadership is about the need to empathize, the need to connect. And we've forgotten the way to do that. And Rael spoke beautifully about people have forgotten how to communicate. And I think storytelling is definitely one vehicle that can help us change that, because my conviction is that, in this world, which is becoming so transactional, every interaction is becoming so transactional, we have an opportunity to humanize our interactions. We have an opportunity to humanize our interactions and create an authentic impact for the world. And that's really my belief. And that's really the message that I'd like to share. That and our role in all of this is, how can we humanize conversations in a transactional world? I mean, if you think about it, just think about it for a moment. The last time you met somebody for the first time, how did you even introduce yourself? There are chances that you introduce yourself by your profession. There are chances that you introduce yourself talking about all the things that you've done. But when was the last time you really told somebody who you are or what drives you, and build that authentic, deeper connect with people, right? And storytelling is really, really powerful. It's a beautiful vehicle to do this. I've been doing research on this subject for the last 20 years, and I've been running these courses for the last 10 years for more than 100 organizations globally, coach thousands of leaders, and I've seen how beautifully they transform the way they are inspiring people, or with the way they are engaging people, or even the way they're influencing people, right? And not just what I'm saying. If you look at the data around us and what the data is telling us around storytelling, this is a study done by Carnegie Mellon University in 2007, showing the results that the story approach persuades people 118% more than data. Can you even imagine? And this is for all of us who are thinking about this left brain, right brain thing. Now, here's evidence that story rules all when it comes to persuasion. And you know that happens to you when you watch a commercial and buy a product that you don't need, right? Now, we're not talking about that kind of storytelling. We're talking about authentic storytelling for the right purpose. The second aspect of data that I want to share with you is the fact that we now know through brain MRIs and neuroscience that when a person receives information just in form of data or facts, it activates only 2 regions of the brain. Whereas when the same person receives the same information in form of a story, it activates 7 out of the 8 regions of the brain. Whole brain activation. Let me give you an example of how this works out. Think about the time when you were sitting at home or maybe at a cinema hall, watching your television, your big screen television, and think about a time that you were watching a movie with a high-speed car chase. Just think about it. Right? You're sitting in this comfortable couch, you're watching this movie with this high-speed car chase, and suddenly the car swerves left and you go like this. You do that, right? Why do you do that? You know you're not sitting in the car. You know it's not real, yet your body behaves as if it's real. Or you're watching a movie like Cliffhanger when the man is hanging on for dear life and his grip is slipping, and you watch that and your palms start getting sweaty. How do you explain that? Right? The logical part of your brain is telling you that's not real, but your body says, shut up, I'm going to make the body behave as if it's real. That's the impact of the psychology on the physiology. That's what storytelling does. It gets people absolutely involved, which is why it's called an immersive experience. So whether you're a business owner, whether you're a change agent, whether you're a project manager, a leader, a consultant, or just somebody out there to make a difference in people's life, you've got a message to share. You've got to inspire people. You've got to influence people. When you use storytelling as a way to do that, you're able to connect with them at a much deeper level and leave that authentic impact that will drive them to action, more likely drive them to action. And finally, we all know what the last 2 years have been like around the world for us. And I don't need to show you this data for you to know that there's increased case of people feeling lonely and a sense of lack of belongingness that people have gone through, being holed up in our houses. All of us have been through that. And today, more than ever, people desire to connect, and they don't want to connect transactionally. We all desire to connect at a human level with other beings. And that has been really heightened in the last 2 years. So if what I shared earlier wasn't enough, and my own story and the way you visualized it wasn't enough for you to understand the power of storytelling, these 3 data points hopefully get you to the space to realize that there is something that we can certainly do about this. Yeah. And, I want to, of course, when we talk about in the workshop that we do, we talk about the 2 pillars of storytelling, and there's a lot of information, the patterns of storytelling, and how do you craft a story? How do you tell a story? I'm not going to get to that, but I want to leave you. We just have 10, 12 minutes. And I think, Mike, I'm extending the time a bit. Sorry about that. I'm just going to take 30 seconds more, but I do want to leave you with something that you can do if you're watching this video. And I want to leave you with one quick tip. I want to leave you with one quick tip on how you can start becoming a storyteller, right? Because I believe everyone is a born storyteller. We've just become shy or unsure of telling stories. So here's what you've got to do. Number one, the first thing, the first story that you've got to have is your backstory, is your genesis story, is a story that describes who you are to the world or to people that you meet at a networking event or anywhere. And the way to do that is right there on the slide for you. Think about 3 values of yours or 3 qualities of yours. Do this right now. Just think about 3 values that describe who you are, 3 qualities of yours that you admire. Maybe it's risk-taking, maybe it's innovative, whatever it is. Now, as you think about these 3 values, or write them down better still, next step, think about, where does this come from? How do you get this? Is it a who? Is it a when? Is it a how? Is it a what? Ask yourself this question. And recall, dig into your memory. Dig into your memory and recall and try to find a specific incident. Because here's rule number 1 of the 10 rules of storytelling that I teach. And rule number 1 is that a story is a real specific incident. That's what makes it authentic storytelling. We're not talking about making up and cooking up stories. So think about a real specific incident that helps you identify why you're a risk taker, or who inspired you to be a risk taker, or when did you first realize you're a risk taker, right? And as you think of that incident, that's your story. That's your story. Pen it down in a few bullet points. And next time when you meet somebody and somebody asks you that innocent question that goes something like this: hey, good to meet you. Curious to know, tell me a little bit about yourself. You may be tempted to give your transactional introduction, but my invitation to you is, let's go a little deeper. Humanize that conversation. Instead of telling that person all about your qualifications and your background and your professional world, just pause and share that incident and arrive at your quality as the key message, and let them know who you truly are. So try this, perhaps today with somebody. And you'll end up definitely making one connection deeper, contributing to making the world a more humane, connected, authentic space. So thank you everyone for watching and for listening, and happy storytelling.
Thank you so much, Gatik. That was extremely interesting. At the risk of sounding transactional, I would say, I have to say I'm a teacher. And so the art of storytelling is something I use all the time, and I just know how effective it is. So you're preaching to the choir, as they say. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mike.